Four things are on the earth are small, but they are exceedingly wise. The ants are a people not strong, yet they provide their food in the summer. The rock badgers are a people not mighty, yet they make their homes in the cliffs. The locusts have no king, yet all of them march in rank. The lizard you can take in your hands, yet is in kings' palaces. That's right, that's what we're studying this week. At least for today, we're looking at verses 24 through 28 in Proverbs chapter 30. Talking about the things that are small but wise. This is what Agar is talking about here. And remember, we're going to try to apply this to ourselves because we're not just talking, the zoo here. We're talking about what do we need to do? How do we live a righteous life? How do we know who God is and what he's like? That was the questions that Agar asked at the beginning. Who is this God? Who is the Son? And that's what he wants to know. So let's take a look at this. Small but wise in verses 24 through 28. All right, first we get the ants. The ants are diligent, and it talks about their diligence and being aware of the season. So ants are not strong compared to large creatures, but they work all summer so that they have food. I mean, relatively, their size, they are strong for their size, and they're stronger for us for our size. But we can just squash them. But they are not large creatures. They don't have big moving machines, but they work all summer to have food. They're constantly working to provide for their needs. We've already seen this because we read Proverbs 6 through 8. Go to the ant, O sluggard, consider her ways, and be wise. Without having any chief officer or ruler, she prepares her bread in summer and gathers her food in the harvest. And so we've seen this already, and Solomon talked about the ants, and so Agar is talking about the ants too. And thinking about this idea that the ants are small, but they're wise. And it says they're strong people. Ants are a strong people. It's funny. It's the word for people. It's yam. And so they're a people, yet they provide food in their summer. So they're not strong compared to other beings. I mean, humans can just squash them underfoot. So in that way, they're not strong. But yet they have food because they work. They work all summer. And that's what Proverbs 6 through 8 was talking about too. Is like, consider them. They don't have a king. They don't have government. They don't have all these things that God has provided for humanity to make sure they have food throughout the winter. But here the ants do the same thing. They work all summer long and make sure it gets done. So what can we learn from looking at the ants? Well, they're small and yet they have their needs met. Size does not prevent them from working. They are diligent workers. You smash the anthill and tomorrow it'll be there again. They work to get their food at the right times. They're always on the lookout for food, right? No doubt, if you leave some food on the ground, guess what? Tomorrow they'll be full of ants. It doesn't actually take long for them to find the food. If you go on a picnic, it seems like they're right on you as soon as you put the food out. And so that's the idea, is that these ants they're small but wise, right? And so they always working, and they gather all the stuff they need during the summer so that they have what they need throughout the winter. Now, we move on to the second one, which is the rock badgers. And here I think we see shrewdness. The rock badgers make their homes among the rocks. They live in the cliffs. The rocky cliffs provide a home that cannot be dug into from the outside, like a home in the dirt. They have their own little castles of stone, right? In Psalm 104, we're shown all the many works of God and how he provides. In verse 18, we read, the high mountains are for the wild goats. The rocks are a refuge for the rock badgers. So we can see the shrewdness of the rock badger here. God has already carved out niches in the rocks, and they're badger size, right? They're little. And so they take advantage of what God's provision is. God has provided for them, and they use that to their benefit. They have a refuge there. God has provided this refuge. He's carved the rocks, on the cliff side there, that have all these little holes in it, little niches. And they find those niches, and that's where they live. And so there's that shrewdness there, using what God has given, being a good steward and being shrewd and knowing what God has given to you. What can you use? What can you work with? And then taking advantage of that and using it for his glory and for your good. And there's a lesson there, right? We should be shrewd. That's what we're told in the Bible too, to be shrewd, like snakes. And as innocent as doves, but we need to be shrewd, and then we also need to, and they're small, right? They're little rock badgers. They're not huge animals. They're little tiny things. And so again, small but wise. They're small, but they're able to survive and to thrive because they're shrewd. All right, that brings us to the next one, which are the locusts. Now, what do we see here, locusts? We see in them the idea of harmony, working together. Locusts do not have a king or designated leader, and yet they all march together in ranks. They move out in swarms, right? They're not all running into each other. They're not hitting, knocking into each other, falling down dead, and all that kind of stuff. They move in a swarm, and they move together in swarms. And when they have finished devouring everything they have, and then they all pick up and move on. It's not like, well, one decides, we're gonna go, and then if you go, no, they kind of all take off, and then they all move to the next place. So the image of locusts is another symbolic genre. It's another symbol actually, the idea of locust is used in quite a few different places, but it's usually used in prophecy. In Joel 2:25, we are told that the army of the northern nation that would invade them would be like the swarm of locusts. So the army from the north is coming down, and they're like locusts. They just have this swarming idea. There's so many of them, but yet they're coming in like an army. So from studying locusts, we can learn something about their harmony and their ability to work together. Like other swarming creatures, there are a lot of them, but when they move, they don't all collide into each other, and then they fall to the ground dead. They're not running into each other. They're not destroying each other because there's so many of them. They're working together. They're moving together. They're in unity with each other. They're in harmony with each other. They move as a swarm. And even though they're small and have really no leader, they're able to do this. So what about us? We have leaders, and we're big compared to the locusts. Can we move in harmony with each other? Shouldn't this be something we're striving for, this idea of unity and harmony, that we're moving together? Not moving separately, but moving together. There's a question there, right? There's a lesson there. There's a lesson in there. Again, we're supposed to consider the next one, which are the lizards, or some translations say the spiders. Either whatever one you want to choose there. There's the idea, and this one is the flexibility and determination. This is most likely here referring to a spotted lizard from the Middle East instead of the spider as the King James renders it. I'm not sure why the King James renders it as spiders, but it's most likely talking about the spotted lizard, which is really the word that's used there. So the point mentioned is that the animal can be taken in your hands, yet it lives in king's palaces. So its size allows it to move around. It's small, right? It allows it to live really anywhere because of its size. So these animals are flexible. They also have a certain determination about them. If you live in Florida, then you know that lizards are everywhere. They will feel at home in a poor man's shack or in the governor's residence. It doesn't matter. If you live in Arizona, it's the idea of scorpions, right? Scorpions are everywhere. Shake out your shoes because they just live everywhere. If you live around here in the Midwest, you're going to end up with spiders everywhere. In every building, whether it's a fancy house or if you're living in a dump, spiders are there. So spiders, we learn from spiders and from these little creatures. They just find a home anywhere. They're able to just go there, be flexible, able to move in. Boom, it's my house. But they're determined to live too, right? So they're going to live. They're seeking shelter, and so they do whatever they can to find that shelter. So there's that idea of flexibility and determination that we as God followers need to have. We need to be determined, and we need to be flexible in how we live our lives as we follow the Lord. We can't just hunker down and be like, oh, I'm staying here no matter what. Like, you could move and you can end up in King's Palace. So you got to be flexible when you're following the Lord and when you're walking down the righteous path, when you're trying to get to know the Lord and to fight against and to remove yourself from the crooked generation, from the generation that does all these horrible things. That's what you need to do. So I think we learn these things, right? We need to be diligent. We need to be aware of the season that we're living in. Whatever that season is for you, everyone's living in a different season. You need to be shrewd. Shrewdness is key. Use what God has given to you for His glory and for your good, and don't squander the gifts and the talents He's given to you, and the friends and the things He's given. All the many things. Your family. Don't you use the family for the glory of God. We need to be in harmony with one another. We need to move together. The church needs to do that. The family needs to do that. That's how it should be. And then finally, lizards are flexible. They are willing to, you can find them everywhere. You can find them even in the king's palace. And so they're flexible. They can go wherever they are needed to be. Wherever there's a place for them, they will find a place. And they're small. They can be crushed by your hand, right? But they find their home where they need to be. So pretty amazing that we can find like spiders in the Midwest here everywhere. If there's an untouched spot, right, where the people aren't constantly knocking down their webs, there will be a web there, guaranteed. So we got to learn these lessons as we follow the Lord down the righteous path. And so we're going to end it here for today, and come back next time. We'll take a look at the stately walk.